Silver City, from boxcars to split levels, 1947 to 1955. Funding provided by the Illinois Humanities Council, Sauk Valley Community College. Project Director, Dr. Randall Norris, Ph.D., Institutional Research, Sterling Public Library, Maud Hembry, Wood County Historical Society, Terry Buckaloo, and the photographs and interviews were provided by the residents and descendants of Silver City. This is the cover of the pamphlet that was handed out to each person who viewed the original 40-foot long 8-panel exhibit in 2008. And the front cover says Silver City, from boxcars to split levels, 1947 to 1955. And the picture is the original Silver City prior to it being moved west later on. Silver City from 1947 to 1955. In the spring of 1947, on the west side of Avenue G in Sterling, Illinois, in a field next to the Rock River, over 100 discarded World War II boxcars housed a migrant workforce that had come to Northwestern Steel and Wire Company for well-paid union jobs. This place, known as Silver City, named after the boxcars painted silver to reflect the sun's heat, wasn't anyone's idea of paradise. Thin strands of electric wire powered a single light bulb inside each boxcar. Long rows of outhouses in groups of 10 testified to the lack of indoor plumbing. Water needed for drinking, bathing, and cooking came from outdoor spigots, and when it rained, the dirt roads inside Silver City were a muddy mess. And even though residents were glad to have a place to live, the fact that boxcars could be picked up by a crane and moved while the residents were either at work or, sometimes, even inside, asleep, made everyone aware that Silver City was never intended as a permanent home for hundreds of families, but was, as one former resident said, a place to be until we got somewhere else. Silver City residents came from dairy farms in Wisconsin, cities in Minnesota, from tomato fields in Ohio, from the cotton patch suburbs of Memphis, Tennessee, from the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas, from the wheat fields of Colorado, and for many of Mexican descent from the hot Rio Grande Valley of Texas. Although most were desperately poor, they weren't looking for a handout. Instead, they only wanted a job and a chance to prove themselves. For them, Northwestern Steel's good wages, an understanding and often admired boss, P.W. Dillon, steady work, reasonable boxcar rents, and the eventual opportunity to purchase a home in either Steelton or Fairview was like a dream come true. But Silver City wasn't an end in itself. It was, instead, the means to an end, an opportunity to make a better life for their children. Those children, both those born and those yet to be born, would fish and swim in the Rock River, would walk 14 blocks to Wallace School, would become star athletes, would eventually become proud high school and college graduates, would father and mother children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who, in the end, would become hard-working, responsible citizens in Sterling, Rock Falls, and Dixon, Illinois. Both the lives they lived and the thousands of descendants who followed them show that Silver City wasn't just a dream, but was in fact, for the original residents of Silver City, a dream come true. This project is dedicated to the families and friends of the original Silver City residents who contributed their interviews, photographs, and memories. Thank you so much. On this page, we see in the upper left-hand corner Maria C. Vasquez Sandoval. In the center picture, we see Eddie Sandoval playing on the banks of the Rock River with two of his friends. And in the bottom picture, we see Eddie Sandoval and his father's 1936 Ford truck. Lucas Sandoval was making only 35 cents an hour working as a butcher in Donna, Texas, before moving to live in Silver City. His starting wage at Northwestern Steel and Wire was $1.08 per hour. In the upper picture on the left, we see Margaret Ransom, who's standing on the right-hand side of the picture, and her friend, Judy Carey, who is on the left-hand side. In the middle picture, Mike Ransom on the left and Eddie Sandoval on the right and his dog Poochie. The bottom picture shows Mike Ransom on the left, George on the front right, Pat on the rear right, and the Jones boy on the rear left. In this picture, we see Margaret Ransom on the left and Judy Ransom on the right, babysitting their two younger brothers who were in the center. This is the interview with Michael E. Ransom, an original resident of Silver City. My dad worked on the Chicago Northwestern Railroad on the line that went from Chicago to Milwaukee. While he was working on the railroad, he met my mom in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and they moved to Kenosha, Wisconsin. He worked for the railroad as a welder until early 1948. Then they started cutting back, and he had 4 kids to support. My uncle said he could get him a job at the mill, so Dad came down to Sterling, went to work at Northwestern for $1.03 an hour, and moved his family into Silver City. We had a double boxcar because there were so many of us. I can remember playing on the river. That was where I caught my first fish, and I remember playing in the scrap pile on a couple of old tanks they'd brought in for scrap. Me and Ed Sandoval would get inside and play. On the weekends, we had fun playing on company property. There was a big deep hole full of rocks and sand, and one day PW caught us in there playing and said, "I don't care if you guys are in there playing, just don't get hurt." Then he took us to the little store in Silver City and bought us an ice cream cone. This page shows the owner's manual, which was a weekly newspaper that was put out by the Northwestern Steel and Wire for the workers at the plant. And it says, Northwestern welcome hundreds of Silver City families. The middle photo on the right is a picture of Silver City from 1953 to 1955 after it had been moved further west along the Rock River about half a mile from the plant so that the plant could be expanded. The picture on the left shows Steelton and Fairview houses being built, and it also appeared in the owner's manual. And it says after Silver City residents moved into Steelton and Fairview, houses were rented for $50 a month and taken out of their checks, and the Northwestern Steel and Wire financed the building. Many of those homes still exist. On this page at the top we have a picture of P.W. Dillon, who lived from 1883 to 1980, almost 100 years old. And at the center of the page is the original Silver City as it existed from 1947 to 1953 along Avenue G. And then at the bottom right, we show open pit furnace where it says making steel was a dirty, dangerous job. As one worker said, we lost about a worker a month. So it was not easy or safe work. The Vasquez family provided several pictures, and here are three of them. Um, Top left, a typical day outside the Vasquez home. We see several vehicles parked there. And then the middle picture on the right is Linda Vasquez in her high chair as a baby. And at the very bottom, we see two of the Vasquez men with their feet up on the bumper of the family car. The next two pages have no identifiers. If I'm not mistaken, both pages are the Ransom children, a little boy and his younger sister holding a rake. And in the second picture, looking very pensive, both of them. And the third picture, the little girl by herself, still determined to hang on to the rake. If you can identify the children in this picture, please contact me at my Gmail address, randalltednorris@gmail.com. It is on the screen here. Again, we have a page that has no identifiers. One young man standing in front of a Jeep and two children beside their father's car, and a woman and a child outside the boxcar. So if you could, and you can identify these people, please send me the information at randalltednorris@gmail.com. That is my regular account. This is Lilo Garcia's interview. Silver City started in 1947, but we didn't move in until 1950 when I was 6. There were only two other boxcars beside the river when we moved in. We lived there until 1953. That was when they built the new part of the mill, and they moved us further west towards Willie's and Speedball Park and painted the boxcars silver. That gave us a new home. The living was pretty rough, especially in the winter. When I woke up in the morning, I had to scrape the ice because it was very cold. When I was about 10, I walked to Wallace School every day, and along the way there was a great big house surrounded by a stockade fence. Inside the fence there was an orchard and grapevine and a pond with fish. In the fall, usually in the afternoon, they'd rake up all the apples and leaves and burn them alongside the road. One day on the way back from school, I could smell those baked apples, and we picked them up and ate them. They were pretty good. And I remember that it was a beautiful walk to school every day. The trees completely covered the road like a big arch, and then, all of a sudden, the trees died. After that, there was a lot of noise every day when they cut up the dead trees with chainsaws. The thing I remember the most about Silver City was the people. There were whites, blacks, Mexicans, and hillbillies from down south. We all had to learn how to get along, and we did. There were two things we had in common. We all focused on the work, and we were all poor. At Christmas time, the Salvation Army truck came to Silver City, and all the kids ran along beside the truck, and they'd throw us bags of fruit and nuts. I'd always go back for another bag. I figured that to them, we all looked alike, and they weren't going to know I'd come back for a second bag. I was right. Nobody ever questioned me. All my memories of Silver City are good ones. In this picture at the top, we see Tommy, Rebecca, and Danny Wilder and Mike Ransom eating a watermelon as children. The middle picture is Elmer Wilder's boxcar, where he fixed it up. And in the bottom picture, Tommy, Rebecca, and Danny Wilder and their dog. Here we see Elmer Wilder and Danny, his son, looking out at the frost on a pretty winter day. This is an interview with Bobby Johnson of Silver City, one of the few African Americans who lived there. When they had race riots in Chicago in the 50s, I began to realize that I had led a sheltered life in Sterling. I didn't realize I lived in a racist time because I'd always mingled with everybody, gone to school with them, and my brother was Sterling High School's first black homecoming king. So I can honestly say racism was alien to my experience here. As I recall, the Hispanic kids in Sterling suffered more racism than I did, probably because there were more of them. There weren't many of us, not then or now. Even after I was married and my husband and I moved back to Shelby, Mississippi to start a small business, I can't honestly say that I encountered any racism in the South either. One thing about Southern whites, they'll tell you what they like and they'll tell you what they don't like. They treated me nice and I treated them nice. I don't compromise who I am for anyone. I always let that shine through. I judge a person by the way they treat me. I feel that if I'm fair with them, they'll be fair with me. For my family, Silver City was a place to live while I was growing up until a better place came along, and while we were there, I had fun. I can't tell you that other children at school teased me because I was from Silver City, because that never happened. When I was growing up, I never remember having a babysitter either, because Dad was always there for me. And he always worked. No matter how sick he was, he went to work. And I think Mr. Dillon appreciated that, because if Dad had any problems at work, he always knew he could talk to Mr. Dillon. Anything he wanted or needed, PW was always there for him. I'm going to talk to PW about that, he would say. When my dad died, PW came to his funeral. The next two pages are dedicated to ordinary day-to-day life in Silver City. The first picture, upper left, John and Mary Dickerson's first child, Terry, was born in boxcar number 45. It's a wedding picture taken just after they were married when he came home from World War II. In the upper right, shoes, shirts, and pants were purchased at Sears and paid for with the first payday. Just below that, Harold's Furniture Store gave credit to Silver City residents, and this was the truck that the things they purchased were delivered into the residents. Bottom left, Jesse Rodriguez says, I used to peel 100 pounds of potatoes at Bill's lunch every day before I went to school for $5 a day. And he remarked also that he was the only teenager from Silver City at school that had a car. He purchased it with his earnings. On the lower right, many Silver City residents moved from Silver City to Steelton and Fairview after they had an opportunity to purchase a home there for $50 a month. Here we have 6 more pictures of day-to-day living in Silver City. Silver City residents also faced tragedy. The upper left corner, a family had moved there from Tennessee, and the car stalled on the railroad tracks, and the train hit the car. But just before the train hit, the mother threw their 9-month-old baby out the window up onto the bank. And when the wreckage was cleared, the baby was uninjured and still alive, and everyone was amazed. On the right-hand side, we see a picture of a Hispanic man picking cotton, And it says that many Silver City residents came straight from the fields, making 50 cents a day to $1.08 an hour. In the center picture, almost all Silver City children attended Wallace School. And this is one of two pictures that we have of Wallace School. Then there was also a hospital, the home hospital, where Silver City residents could go when they were severely ill. And at the bottom, there are two doctors. Dr. Peter Gray is with his daughter Mary, and Dr. Dora Zeisky is pictured. We don't have a picture of her husband, Peter, but the two of them delivered many of the Silver City babies. This is a picture of Tommy, Rebecca, and Danny Wilder and Mike Ransom eating watermelon as children in Silver City. This is a picture of Elmer Wilder's boxcar. Elmer Wilder fixed up his boxcar, as did many residents. The Northwestern Steel and Wire paid for the materials, and the residents did the labor. Again, here we have one of the many pictures that the Wilders contributed to the project, where Tommy, Rebecca, and Danny Wilder were playing with their dog. The Velasquez family contributed many pictures. In the top picture, we see Maria Isabel Velasquez standing beside a snowman that the children had built outside their boxcar. And in the middle picture, Rudy and Maria Velasquez are standing next to their car. In the bottom picture, Maria Isabel Velasquez on the left and her sister-in-law on the right are also standing in front of the same car. In this picture, we see what life in Silver City was all about. Rogelio Velasquez saved his pay stub from a week at the Northwestern Steel and Wire, where he worked 40 hours on regular time and 10 hours of overtime, for which he was paid $72.80. By the time everything was taken out, he had $44.12 left. A very good wage for right after World War II. And he says, "My brother Rudy and I were the first ones to come to Sterling from Lagos de Moreno, Mexico. I saved every pay stub I ever received for the next 36 years so I could prove to people that I had paid my taxes." Rogelio Velasquez. Rogelio Velasquez and his brother Juan Velasquez, both Silver City residents, when I interviewed them, they were in their 80s, and I was going to interview them separately, but I did them together because one would start a sentence and his brother would finish it. So here's their interview. "Me and my brother Rudy were the first ones to come here from Lake Moreno, Mexico. There were only about 10 boxcars when we moved in, and we were in the third one. I lived in Silver City for 2 years. It was just a place to live. Most of the people who lived there came here to work, and then they moved as soon as they could. When it rained, there was so much mud, and they had outhouses and no running water. I could have bought a house in Steelton, but instead I bought this one in Rock Falls. The land over there was so low it flooded whenever it rained, so I didn't want to buy a house over there. There weren't too many Hispanics here when we arrived. They liked us because we were good workers, and that was why P.W. Dillon hired someone to bring people up here from Texas. He needed good workers because at one time there were over 5,000 people working at the mill. P.W. was a good man. I think everybody thought he was the best boss they had ever had. He was always at the plant, sometimes at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and if he found anything wrong, he hunted up the foreman to fix it. He gave me a chance to earn a living, and that's all I wanted. This is my first check from September 9 to September 15, 1951. When I started to work at the mill, they sent me to Sears Roebuck to get my work clothes, and they took it out of my check. I worked there for 36 years, and I saved every pay stub they ever gave me. Why? Because I only got to be a citizen 7 or 8 years ago, and I wanted to be able to prove to people that for all those years I paid my taxes just like they did. In the top picture, Juan Olalde on the right is standing next to an unknown friend beside his father's car. In the central picture, we see a young child playing in the mud outside of the boxcar, and in the bottom picture, we see a group of children, an unknown boy on a tractor, Isabel Giagos, Dolores Olalde, Juan Olalde, and Mary Estrada, all gathered around, running around the streets of Silver City. We know from our research that only 110 cars were ever in Silver City, and here we see in April of 1948, Jose Olalde lived in boxcar number 78. This is the second picture in the exhibit of Wallace School, where Silver City students attended, and from all accounts, they were very happy there. This is the back cover of the pamphlet that went along with the exhibit, and here we see Joel Canis and his sister Guadalupe Rodriguez with their son Carlos. Unfortunately, 6 months after this picture was taken, the baby died with pneumonia. So the reason everyone was there for the children, this child unfortunately did not reap the rewards and benefits of Silver City like so many others did.